just no good anymore since you went away. Number.
All right. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority study session on September 26, 2022. For those wishing to join, the Zoom ID tonight, the Zoom ID is 870-1796-0123. Telephone number is 720-707-2729. 2699. And again, that webinar ID is 870-1796-0123. And you'll have a double pound to go ahead and get going into the meeting. And with that, I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Paul.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Willie Cindy Fairway is absent. Franks.
Here.
Jansen.
Here.
Kerr.
Here.
Mayotte Guerrero.
She's walking in.
Miller.
Here.
Olver.
Here.
Sharazai.
Here.
Springsteen. Commissioner Springsteen. Stewart.
Here.
Strom.
Here.
Vincent.
Here.
And Wolfram.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
All right. Well, good evening. I would like to thank everybody for taking the time to be here. I know it's a little bit of an odd hour, but things are stacking up for this body, not only on the commission, but also on the council. So appreciate the flexibility in trying to work with us. This is a continuation of our first meeting since the expansion of this board, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Smith, who's going to bring us forward tonight and lead our discussion.
Well, thank you so much, Chairman Paul and Commissioners. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Got a good piece of news to start off with, or a piece of good news to start off with. The Lakewood Reinvestment Authority, of which you are all members of the board, has been nominated for an award from the Jefferson County Economic Development Corporation, and it's a Community Partner Award. And part of the reason for that is that we're setting the foundation for working together all of the elements of the community. As I mentioned on the 15th, we're the first community in Jeffco to do that. And basically we're creating a blueprint for some other cities that may join us or join in that same process a little bit later. So having the county at the table and the school district and all of the special districts and special representatives and all of the council that's always traditionally been part of the LRA, figuring out how to get all these folks to row in the boat the same direction to use the urban renewal tool effectively. That's something worth acknowledging and knowing about that. So the award ceremony is on November the 2nd. I'll give you some more information about that as we move along. But I just did want to mention that to you. This is the third study session, as Chair Paul mentioned, since with the expansion of the board. And just as a reminder to everyone here and the folks paying attention at home, there's no decisions being made tonight. It's a study session. It's really just to download information about the LRA and what we're planning on doing or have done or those kinds of things, so that everybody's up to that same speed with the Reinvestment Authority. The first business meeting for the authority after the expansion will be the 17th of October. We've put that date into the calendar for the approval of the 2023 budget. We talked a lot about the budget in our last session last Monday. Folks that want to take a look at that budget, it is online. You can certainly read through that. It's at lakewood.org, www.lakewood.org/LRA. Those three letters in the row, and there at the bottom of the page is the 2023 budget. When we get to October 17th, that'll be the time that there'll be a resolution in front of the council, in front of the LRA board, and then we will hope to approve that budget going into 2023. Just so you're aware, there probably will also be a consent agenda on there to take care of some business that needs to get taken care of. Consent agendas, of course, are generally of a non-controversial nature. So mostly what would happen there is the minutes from the last time the LRA had a business meeting. So that was all the way back in March. That'll be on the consent agenda to approve those minutes. And generally, most folks don't have input to the minutes and whatnot. But I do want to make sure everyone knows there's no big issues that would suddenly come up in that agenda. So it's mostly the budget and any of those little things that are in the consent agenda. If there were anything else, it certainly wouldn't be big or something that would be something you'd want a lot of information about. So just wanted to mention those things here. So tonight we're talking a little bit about the three of the LRA areas. As I mentioned to you before, there are 4 areas. We've done the transaction flow for the first one, which was Alameda 1. We did that back on August the 15th. Talked about that one. So we've got the other 3 areas to talk about tonight. And again, the point of this is to let folks know that project areas can be structured differently to best align with the urban renewal plan. So we've got 4 areas, 4 different ways of going. You'll see the transaction flow is different for each of them. So if and when we do something new, a new urban renewal area, we can structure it in a way that makes the most sense for aligning with mitigating the blight in that particular area. Also want to point out that there's a lot of financing mechanisms that are often used. Some of them are part of the LRA's implementation authority to oversee those. Some of them are not. So for example, tax increment financing, we spent a lot of time talking about tax increment on the 15th of August. Financing on those revenues, that's within the LRA's implementation purview. So anything that has to do with the word TIF, and you'll recall that TIF stands for tax increment financing, has to do with the way in which we spend those dollars that have come in under the increment, the capture on the increment. And the capture on the increment is 25 years, as we've mentioned before, and so we'll talk a little bit about that for the different areas. Some things that aren't in the LRA's purview of implementation oversight, PIFs, and I know it sounds weird because you got TIF and you got PIF, and it sounds kind of sing-songy on there. PIF stands for Public Improvement Fee, and those go on into projects. They help to mitigate blight, but they're not under the LRA's purview of working through those kinds of things. Those are a council decision, and working with the council on those public improvement fees are PIFs. Metro districts, business improvement districts, the LRA doesn't control those or oversee those. Council generally oversees all of those, just so you're aware. And I want to make that point there. So the goal this evening isn't to become experts in public financing by any stretch of the imagination. It's really to just get a real, from broad overview of the way in which the transaction flows happen in these remaining 3 areas. Just to understand it, understand that there's different financing mechanisms at work here, and where the dollars come in and where they go through and how they get to the other side. That's really the goal. And then there's also another goal here is to understand that there is some latitude in the implementation strategy. For example, when we talk about Colfax, we'll talk about the fact that we rebate back the increment capture to the fire department. That was something that West Metro Fire was instrumental in pioneering, worked with Wheat Ridge and worked with Lakewood in order to get that, basically that reimbursement coming back. So we capture all of the increment that would normally be attributed to the West Metro Fire, and we wind up just handing it right back to them in that particular area for a variety of reasons, and certainly we can go into those at some future date. But my point is that that's really the underpinning of the structure for the change in the statute we talked a lot about on August the 15th, is the fact that all of these taxing entities, we will, if we do new areas, have to get an IGA or an intergovernmental agreement with each of these areas in terms of how much they're going to pledge and work with, and how much they want to contribute into the mitigation of blight into those new areas. And so that's part of the new process in there, but I want to make sure everyone knows that we've already started that process, and thanks to our friends at West Metro for setting that up and being innovative and figuring out ways that we can make that happen. So you'll hear about that in just a little bit. So without further ado, it's my distinct pleasure to bring up to the podium to chat with you the intrepid and perspicacious Nicole Stair from our finance division. She's been given the task of going through all of the documents that are associated with these areas and creating these flow charts that hopefully make it a little easier to understand what's happening in those areas as far as transaction flow. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Ms. Nicole Stair. You bet.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Good evening, Ms. Stair. Welcome. It's nice to have you with us this evening.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. As Robert or Mr. Smith mentioned, my name is Nicole Stair. I'm the revenue manager with the City of Lakewood in the Revenue Division. And tonight I will be presenting each of the Lakewood Reinvestment Authority areas from a financial perspective. And I stuck this in my pocket. Lakewood has 4 LRA project areas. Alameda 1 was presented last month on August 15th, and the 3 that I will present tonight is Colfax and Wadsworth, also known as Creekside, Alameda 2, better known as Belmar, and West Colfax Corridor. In 1997, Lakewood voters approved the formation of Lakewood Urban Renewal Authority. The authority that was created is Lakewood Reinvestment Authority, or LRA. So you are the LRA. The formation was in accordance with Colorado Urban Renewal Law. Urban renewal laws allow municipal governments to engage in urban renewal projects to improve blighted areas. Through the planning of public improvements, urban renewal projects encourage reinvestment within a targeted area within Lakewood to enhance, preserve, and restore the city's vitality and quality of life in the area. The LRA is authorized to borrow money, issue bonds, and accept grants from public and private sources. The LRA's 3 major primary goals is to mitigate blight, facilitate private investment, and enhance Lakewood's ability to preserve and restore vitality and quality of life. Uh-oh.
Turn it on.
Okay, thank you. The most common urban renewal financing tools is tax increment financing, or TIF, which can be sales tax, property tax, or both. TIF revenues can be used to construct new streets and update streetlights, parking facilities, and sidewalks. Revenue can also be used for building facade improvements, parks and plazas, and public amenities. TIF is additional revenue that is generated from the redevelopment. So the revenue is used to fund the projects within the revenue areas. So otherwise, it's funds that we utilize at the beginning, and then going forward, we pay ourselves back through TIF, or a redeveloper back through TIF. The funds can be retained by the LRA for a period up to 25 years. Another financing tool is public improvement fees, or PIF. And PIF is a fee that is collected from the retailer, from the customer, on the retail price of goods in a renewal area to pay for the redevelopment. Revenue generated by PIF is used to reimburse the redeveloper for public improvements, and the redeveloper may continue the PIF to maintain public improvements. The first reinvestment area that I will present is Colfax and Wadsworth Reinvestment Area, better known as Creekside Shopping Center. Colfax and Wadsworth Reinvestment Area is located on the northeast corner of Colfax and Wadsworth. In the 1990s, the Colfax and Wadsworth Reinvestment Conditions Study established that the area had numerous indicators of serious blight. The area included the site of a former Kmart that sat vacant for nearly a decade. Environmental contamination was present on portions of the site, and floodplain covered a large portion of the area. These issues made redevelopment impractical because developers were not interested in investing in an area that required this much work. To encourage development, the Colfax and Wadsworth Reinvestment Plan was prepared by the city and approved by City Council in 1999. The expiration date of the plan and the redevelopment agreement is 25 years from the approval of the reinvestment plan, or 2024. The redevelopment agreement, the redeveloper agreed to redevelop the property and provide initial redevelopment capital. LRA is the public partner in the redevelopment. To provide funds to reimburse the redevelopment for the project, the LRA designated a tax increment area. All public assistance to the redeveloper is tied directly to public and/or public-related improvements. The project consists of the redevelopment of the property in accordance with the redevelopment plan, which included the design, construction of the public improvements such as drainage and sanitary sewer improvements, traffic signals, and street lighting. Colfax and Wadsworth was developed as Creekside Shopping Center, a 265,000 square foot retail development. This is the flow chart that demonstrates the flow of TIF and PIF transactions for the area. So to start, the customer makes a purchase from a retail store located in the Creekside Shopping Center. The retailer collects the price of the items purchased plus PIF and sales tax. The retailer then remits Lakewood's sales tax and the PIF to Lakewood on a Lakewood tax return. The PIF is transferred directly to the developer. Next, the city receives the sales tax, and in the diamond determines if the sales tax increment was base has been met, and the base is the amount of sales tax generated in the area at the time prior to the redevelopment. And if that base hasn't been met, Lakewood retains the sales tax. Once the base has been met, the remaining sales tax becomes the sales tax increment. And then property owners located in the renewal area pay property tax to Jefferson County. Jeffco determines the property tax increment and sends the additional funds to the city. The sales tax increment and property tax increment are transferred to the LRA. The LRA keeps 1% of the increment for administrative costs and then distributes $1 million per year to the city of Lakewood. And then the remainder of the funds goes to the redeveloper to reimburse the initial capital that the redeveloper provided back in 2003. The Colfax and Wadsworth reinvestment area was improved with public streets, sidewalks, utilities, and a stormwater management system. Sales in the renewal area has increased from $4 million in 1999 to $44 million in 2001. For these figures, an estimate of normal growth was removed. The estimate was based on the economic data that the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis on the retail trade in Denver, Aurora, Lakewood for the years corresponding to the reinvestment. In the previous presentation for Alameda 1 on the 15th of August, the figures were recalculated with the same economic data as just explained, and it was determined that the sales in the renewal area increased for Alameda 1, 67 million to 71 million in 2001. The next steps for Colfax and Wadsworth reinvestment area is to plan for the completion of the increment capture period in 2024. Funds will continue to be reimbursed to the developer and perhaps a small blight mitigation initiative with extra funds. Next area is the West Alameda Corridor reinvestment area. This is the second phase of the Alameda Corridor, also known as Alameda 2 or Belmar Shopping Center. Alameda 2 is located on the southeast corner of Alameda and Wadsworth. The West Alameda Avenue Corridor Urban Redevelopment Plan was adopted in 1998, and in 2000, Villa Italia's site was added to the area. Then it was decided to modify the West Alameda Avenue Corridor Urban Renewal Development Plan by adding Phase 2 of the project area. Resolution 2000-82 was adopted by City Council in the year 2000. The plan expires in 2025. For 35 years, Villa Italia was viewed as a commercial and social center for the city of Lakewood. However, by the late 1980s and into the 1990s, the mall started to see a gradual decline. In 1999, the property was around 50% vacant, and in 2001, the mall closed. There were numerous areas of serious blight. The complicated ownership structure, numerous tenant leases, and brownfields, including soil and groundwater contamination and asbestos, were factors that discouraged redevelopment. Once the reinvestment area was created, a redeveloper was selected. It was determined that the best long-term use of the site was to transform it into a mixed-use downtown district for the people of Lakewood. The redeveloper agreed to redevelop the property and provide some initial redevelopment capital. Bonds were also issued. A 2.5% PIF covenant was recorded with Jeffco to help pay for the redevelopment. The city temporarily waived 2% of its 3% sales tax to ensure that purchases were made in Belmar were competitive with similar Denver metro areas. The area was transformed into Belmar Shopping Center, a 1.2 million square foot center consisting of retail, restaurants, residential homes, entertainment, public plaza, and a hotel. The area received new public streets and several utilities. The flow chart demonstrates the flow of TIF and PIF transactions in the area. A customer makes a purchase for a retail store located in Belmar Shopping Center or pays for a stay at the hotel. The retailer collects the price of the item purchased plus PIF and sales tax and lodging tax for the hotel stay. The retailer remits Lakewood sales tax, lodging tax, and PIF to Lakewood on the Lakewood sales tax return. The PIF and 1/2 of lodging tax is transferred directly to Plaza Metro districts. The primary purpose of the districts is to provide public improvements for the use and benefits of the district's inhabitants and taxpayers. It also manages, operates, and facilitates the improvements, as well as manage the finances of the project. In the diamond, Lakewood receives the sales tax and determines the sales tax if the sales tax increment has been met. The base is the amount of sales tax generated in the area prior to the redevelopment. If the base has not been met, sales tax is retained by the city of Lakewood. But once the base has been met, the remaining sales tax becomes part of the sales tax increment. Property owners located in the renewal area pay property tax to Jefferson County. Jeffco determines the property tax increment and sends the additional amount to the city of Lakewood. The sales tax increment and property tax increments are transferred to the Plaza Metro districts. The Plaza Metro districts utilize the funds necessary to maintain public improvements and pay the bond debt service. The remainder of the funds goes to the redeveloper for the reimbursement of the initial capital that was provided up front. Had good help. Some of the benefits of revitalizing Alameda 2 are the redevelopment established a commercial and social area for the citizens of Lakewood and provide a city with a downtown area. It improved character and environment. Alameda Streetscapes project included landscapes, sidewalks, signals, and bike paths. Public improvements such as public streets, sidewalks, utilities, and stormwater management system. A lot of blight mitigation and sales in the renewed area have increased $149 million in 1999 to $195 million in 2021, and that's with estimated normal growth removed. The next steps in the area are to plan completion of the increment capture period, which will be in 2025, and most funds will pay back the public improvement expenses that were made. Lastly, the West Colfax Corridor Reinvestment Area, which is located along Colfax from Sheridan Boulevard to Sims. The LRA prepared the West Colfax Avenue, there is the map. From Sims to Sheridan along Colfax is the area. And the LRA prepared the West Colfax Avenue Corridor Reinvestment Plan, and City Council approved the plan in 2005. The expiration date is the 25 years after the plan was approved, which is 2030. West Colfax Revitalization Plan objectives were to develop a clear and coordinated course of action to establish the West Colfax Corridor as a vital and prosperous place to work, live, visit, and conduct business. Support existing West Colfax businesses, strengthen the neighborhood next to the neighborhoods next to West Colfax, remove existing physical constraints in redevelopment, and create a physical setting which will attract and retain business. In 2006, the LRA and West Metro District entered into an intergovernment agreement, or an intergovernmental agreement. The LRA agreed to provide a portion of the tax increment received for fire protection and emergency services by the district within the plan area. In 2008, the construction of the West Colfax Light Rail, Lakewood had an opportunity to cooperate with RTD in developing rail stations that enhance the West Colfax corridor and promote the objective of the reinvestment plan. The LRA entered in a loan agreement to reimburse RTD for the enhancements, also known as betterments, in the design and construction of the light rail stations located at Wadsworth and then Oak Street Station. In 2016, the LRA entered into agreement with BSV Lamont concerning West Colfax Urban Renewal Plan. The purpose of this agreement was to complete the development of the property located around Casa Bonita, to enhance pedestrian amenities, and by eliminating and preventing blight conditions. Other small projects have been funded by tax increment financing, such as West Colfax Sculpture Walk and the 40s West Art Hub. This flow chart demonstrates the flow of TIF transactions for the area. A customer makes a purchase from a retail store along West Colfax, and the retailer collects the price of the items purchased plus sales tax. Then the retailer remits the Lakewood sales tax on a Lakewood's tax return. In the diamond, Lakewood determines if the sales tax increment has been met. If the base has not been met, sales tax is retained by the city of Lakewood. Once the base has been met, the remaining sales tax becomes the sales tax increment. Property owners located in the renewal area pay property tax to Jefferson County, and Jefferson County determines the property tax increment and sends the additional funds to the city of Lakewood. Both the sales tax and property tax increment is sent to the LRA, and the LRA pays for the Betterment Project, West Metro Fire District, Lakewood West Colfax Bid, and West Colfax Avenue Project. West Colfax Corridor has benefited by revitalizing the area, which improved character and environment, enhanced the Oak Street and Wadsworth rail stations, provided many public improvements, blight mitigation, and sales tax for the renewal area actually decreased from $283 million in 1999 to $207 in 2021, with the normal growth removed. Next steps is to discuss future investments for the area and plan completion of the increment capture period, which is 2030. And that's all the areas, and just open it up to questions and discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Can we go ahead and go back to the screen so we can see our folks on board? And I would just ask, and maybe Mr. Smith, to clarify one thing and then ask your opinion on another. So as far as the school districts go, they are backfilled by the state of Colorado, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And what's interesting is when you see that decrease, and I think we've continued to see businesses leave Colfax, but and you may not have an answer tonight, but what would you attribute some of that loss to? I know Westland in 99 was probably still part of what was going on, and we've lost some of those big box stores there. Any other ideas where we've seen these decreases along the corridor?
A total speculation at this point, but again, you pointed out the Westland shopping area is not anywhere where it was during that period of time, and not generating those kinds of sales taxes. The other thing is that a lot of businesses have shifted over into service types of businesses, which don't carry as much sales tax. So we did have the benefit of redevelopment in a number of areas from a building perspective or investment in the properties, but not so much in terms of sales tax generation generation and sales tax generating businesses.
Okay. All right, commissioners, if I'd like to open the floor. I thought Commissioner Kerr was on. Is he on? I don't see him on our screen, that's all. Okay. And I know that Commissioner Springsteen had her hand up as well, so.
I'm here.
Yeah, the
Okay,
request doesn't
there.
work.
Oh, well, that's because we need to unlock these, please. We can.
Oh.
Commissioner Miller, go ahead and kick us off.
I just had a real quick question first about the Watts and Colfax presentation at the very beginning, where you talked about the potential for a small blight initiative. And could you just elaborate a tad on what that might be and what your priorities would be for that and how we would direct funding for that? And then a question on the last project, but I'll just stop there because I'm sure other people have other questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I'll just interrupt, Miss Commissioner Miller. That was actually my question too. So thank you.
Great minds.
Thank you both.
In general, as we've talked about it, it's the pacing of the dollars and the revenue that match up with the 25-year clock. So we're keeping our eye on that ball at all times to see where the dollars are lining up. And so we believe that in that area, we may have a small amount of money to invest in some kind of a blight mitigation activity in that particular area. We don't have anything specific in mind right at the moment, but that would be one of the things that we need to discuss with this board over the course of the next couple of years, or in the next couple of years, be able to determine what those dollars might be and where we might like to reinvest them. In general, as we've talked about many, many times, blight mitigation is our ultimate goal there. And so can we make the area safer? Can we make the area more attractive? Can we make the area take care of those 11 blighting conditions that were found in the survey and what those projects might be? But at this juncture, for the commissioners that are asking, we don't have a specific sort of a thing in mind where we want to do X, Y, Z right over there. We will talk about those as we move along, and then at some point, as I mentioned with the budget study, we have that kind of operational budget, things that we were already committed to on a daily basis, and then any of those additional dollar things we bring up in a larger format so that the commission can look at those things independently. So at some point, we would bring forward something like, here's our idea for X, Y, and Z that we think will match up with those funds and mitigate blight in these ways, and that's how we'd come back to what that would be.
Commissioner Miller, did you have a follow-up? Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could. So in that regard, would you also talk with the investors or the organizations or entities that are within that redevelopment area to find out what their priorities might be as well, so that they might have a better understanding of what they think might be helpful for us to be investing in? Is that how that works with your considerations?
Absolutely. We're in constant contact with all of the property owners in the urban renewal areas, and they've never been shy in terms of telling us what they would like to see happen in those particular areas. And then it's up to the staff and then ultimately to the commission here to determine what's the most effective way to deploy the resources that we have in order to solve those problems. And so the short answer is yes, we're talking with anybody that wants to offer an opinion and figure out what's the best way to move our community forward.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Vincent.
A couple of questions, and a couple of mine have already been answered. 2025 for the PIF for the Alameda District, that's when it's scheduled to cease?
Not quite correct. The
Okay.
PIF was installed in 2003, so it's 25 years from that. The PIF is different than the TIF, and I know that sounds kind of sing-songy. Don't pay attention to the PIF, pay attention to the TIF. In the case of the PIF, that one's not slated to be modified until 2028, which is 25 years after that. You recall at the top, we talked about the PIF being something that council controls, not the LRA, so it's not attached to that 25-year clock. So the PIF is intended to be modified in the year 2028.
Okay, and the TIF is not in 2025?
No, the TIF is 2025, so
okay.
those two things are operating on different clocks, slightly different clocks in there. And then just as a reminder, we talked a lot about this on the 15th. We're collecting those sales tax dollars from year 25 in what ostensibly is year 26. So the dates that you saw there, those are the years that the increment capture ends, but we'll be capturing that increment into the following year, just so you know. So all of those dates there, we'll be wrapping it up all the way till the following year as we're collecting those taxes from the year previous.
Okay, that's what I thought. You and I have had discussions. You know I get asked that question quite a bit.
Yes, I do, and it can be rather confusing just because there's different clocks and whatnot. And so again, the idea was just to give you a real strong general overview of how these transactions work.
And the last question, one more question. You had, I think I saw on the slide too, PIF and half the lodging tax. Gets back to the plaza, Metro Plaza districts. whatever
Yeah,
it's called.
that was an agreement that was made within the Alameda 2 area to pledge lodging tax or portion of lodging tax into that financing or that increment sort of a thing. In other words, we've pledged sales tax to a variety of things, but in that particular case, lodging tax, half of the lodging tax was applied back to that to develop the hotel. You may recall that originally Belmar was designed to have 2 or 3 hotels in there, and so the idea was that was used to try to incentivize that development. So, perhaps that'll be relevant in the future, but right now we've got the one hotel, and that's where half of that lodging tax goes into that reimbursement.
So that's going to continue.
That will continue to the end of the TIF.
Of the TIF,
And so
okay.
then when that goes out, then that increment, I don't believe will continue after that. It's a great question, and I will double check my answer for you, but that's my recollection of what's going to happen is it ends with the TIF.
With that, okay, thank you.
You got it.
So I have Commissioner Olver, then Commissioner Strom.
Thank you. Hey, Robert. I got to follow up on that last question with it stops in 2025, but we keep collecting until 2026. I really don't understand that well. And it sounds a lot like our real estate taxes where you get a bill and it was for last year, and I don't understand that well, truthfully. And so if you could clear it up here, I might be able to understand my own real estate taxes.
You bet. All the property taxes are collected in arrears. So the value of the property is determined for the year that's there. The tax is determined, and then they say, please pay your tax for the year previous. So in 2022, you're paying your 2021 tax assessment.
Right.
And so it's always collected a year in arrears.
So it winds up being 25 years anyway.
Exactly. It's 25
Something like
years, and
yours.
if you were to go back to the beginning of it, we didn't start collecting the taxes in the first year until the second year of the urban renewal area. So
Gotcha.
it's always 25 years, but it's 25 years of collection, not 25 years necessarily from the moment that it was declared.
Right. You just said it's always 25 years, but you said earlier that it's up to 25 years. But it sounds like all the ones we're working on are 25 years. And going forward, is it always going to be 25 years? Because it just seems to me that we won't need that long sometimes, and maybe some other times we need longer, depending on how much we're collecting and how much we're paying out, et cetera. So it seems like a fixed 25-year period is restrictive.
The statute allows for up to 25 years. Could we negotiate some other arrangement with different years? The answer to that question is yes, it could be done. Most urban renewal authorities use that 25-year clock as a regular basis for how long the urban renewal area is capturing that tax increment. But statute allows for up to 25 years.
Okay, yeah, I was worried about that because you also mentioned that Villa Italia only had a 25-year lifespan. And so if we're paying for something and it only lasts 25 years, we got to start paying for it all over again. So anyway, it just seems like a complication down the road. But you might know that I'm a hands-on kind of guy. So today I went to Walmart and bought a dog bowl for the dog park.
Thank you for shopping in Lakewood. We appreciate it.
And I have the thing. And you had great flow charts, but they started going a little bit crazy. And so maybe we can just talk about this for a second. So today, there's a tax, this is what they say on their receipt. Tax one was 7.6125%. I'm assuming that is nothing to do with TIFs or PIFs or anything. It's just the state sales tax. Some of that comes to Lakewood probably.
No, I'm not looking at the receipt that you're looking at there, but I'm going to make an assumption based on what you've told me here. That 7.65 has to do with multiple collections of sales tax on
Right.
there. So in other words, the state collects some on the sales tax, the county, I mean, there's a variety of entities that go into that 7.65%.
Right. Yeah. But it's not the TIF and it's not the PIF. And there's another tax right here that's tax 6. They don't say PIF or TIF. They say tax 1, tax 6. The tax 6 is 1.5%. That's the PIF? Correct. Okay. So I paid 1.5% of that is going back to Walmart today. Do we, yeah, you seem to.
Yes, it's going back to the redevelopment. It's reimbursing all of the creek sorts of things that you've got there, the bridges, all of those things that we talked about in the budget ceremony, or the budget session last
Right, so
week.
everything that they spent money on 25 years ago
Correct.
and it's paying them. So do we know that if we overpay them or underpay them? In other words, do we know how much money we have given to them, given back? I'm sure we do. How much money have we given back to Walmart, and how much did they spend? And that question kind of is a leading question. What the real question is, did we pay Walmart to build a store?
The general answer to the question is we probably do have that information. We don't have it in front of us. We don't, we'd have to do some calculations in order to figure out whatever that is. That's not a question that we answer on a regular basis on there. The thing that happens is at the beginning of the formation of these areas, there's determined a gap that is public improvements that need to be financed in some way or another. In this particular case, the Walmart redeveloper, which is, I believe was Walmart Real Estate in those days, but their real estate arm developed that and said, these are public improvements. We said, hey, can you front those, and then we'll pay you back through this PIF and the TIF arrangement to get to the point where we wind up paying for that particular instance. And so your question is, do we overpay them? Do we wind up, with, it cost $100 million, but we wind up paying them $150 million? Answer is no. We try to get all the way up to that cap.
So how do we not pay them $150 million? How do we not go over that cap? I mean, how do we not do it?
Generally speaking, the calculations are pretty precise in terms of we know what the flow will be in the flow, and occasionally it changes, and it turns, maybe there's a recession year or there's an exceptionally good year in terms of collection. All those things get baked into the pie to make sure that we don't do that we're paying the appropriate amount all throughout the length of the entire project.
Okay. One other thing. I bought 2 things. And this might be a little off topic, but this is food. I mean, I just bought some pineapple juice. On that one, and this, there's a tax, and this might speak to what somebody else mentioned here a couple of weeks ago. There's a tax number 2. It's at 0.5%. I'm assuming that has nothing to do with TIFs and PIFs. And do you know if that's a Lakewood sales tax? What is that?
County tax.
It's a county tax on food. Okay, so it's not Lakewood taxing food, because we had that question here on council, I think just 2 weeks ago, and the question was, are we taxing food? And there's a tax on that food, but it's not Lakewood, so we don't beat our drums and chests about this one too hard. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Strum.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the excellent presentation and the lovely charts that made it a little bit easier to understand. My question goes to the Colfax and Wadsworth area, and I noticed throughout that money was ultimately paid to a number of different projects and different entities. At the Colfax and Wadsworth one, it had $1 million a year that was going to the city, and I'm curious where that goes, if that's something that we know here tonight.
I'll have to double check, but I believe it flows through just like all regular tax, general.
There you go.
It goes through just like any tax that we receive. It goes through the general and capital improvement fund. It's split out between those two.
How is it such an even set number?
It just was part of the agreement. I don't know where they came up with that number.
Gotcha, okay.
But it's all just part of their agreement from the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioners, are there any further questions? Yeah, Commissioner Miller, go ahead.
Following up on the Colfax project, and you noted that there's a specific area that was a sales tax generator, but has kind of quietly gone off the sales tax roll, so to speak. Is there a way to restructure the areas so that that area could be re-envisioned, so to speak, or rebuilt in a different way so that it could maybe take still advantage of that 25 years, but it could be carved out and maybe we do something different with it. Is there any flexibility in how we might re-envision what could be done with that specific area that has kind of gone off the rolls, so to speak?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, that we
Okay.
we can restructure a lot of things in there. Just so you know, with the Westland Shopping Center, we work on a regular basis, trying to work with the current property owners and redevelop it. And we know it's painful and slow and that things have not gone as rapidly as we would like them to. If we could have that happen within the 25-year clock, there may be an ability to use the resources of the LRA to make some of that happen. But that would, the things over which the LRA Commission has control, the implementation part of it, those are the kinds of things that we could talk about trying to put back into that project. As far as other elements with it, the Economic Development Fund, the General Fund, any number of things, we'd have to discuss that with the bodies that control those particular elements in there. We've been working with the current owners who purchased it, I'm going to say almost a year ago, something along that line, the beginning of this year. We've been working with them in terms of what does that look like, and they've been working on visioning that and figuring out what that looks like and how that might go about, but they haven't been particularly quick off the dime in order to make that happen. So the reason to expand the board, or one of the reasons to expand the LRA board, is to take on those very questions. Is there a reason to modify the urban renewal area in terms of its geography or the structure to the plan, that sort of thing? In order to do that, we have to have the expanded board in place. If we wanted to take on that question without having the expanded board in place, we would have to expand the board, and that would add more time to the process. So part of the reason why we've done this at this time is to get that infrastructure in place so that if we wanted to make those kinds of changes, all of the correct players are around the table to figure out what those changes look like, how would we implement them, and what are the likely outcomes of that implementation.
Okay, thank you very much. Most appreciated.
You bet.
All right, Commissioners, if there's nothing else, Mr. Smith, is there a quick update as to our next meeting, what that looks like?
The next meeting we've got scheduled is for the 17th of October. Am I remembering that correctly? 17th of October, which is it'll be a business meeting, so folks will be able to vote on the primary, the kind of the marquee event is voting on the 2023 budget for the LRA. That's that little 12-page document, not the big, thick doorstopper that the city has on there, but that thin budget that's part of the LRA. We vote to approve that. We get that in there into the Department of Local Affairs by the end of the year as required by state statute, and then we'll start scheduling meetings to try to talk about some of these issues that folks would like to talk about. We identified a lot of the stuff in the 8:15 meeting of some things we could be talking about, and so at that point we'll kind of determine what that looks like. But next meeting, 17th of October. And then after that, we'll steer it as it comes.
Fantastic. We'll certainly appreciate everybody's time, and with that, we will adjourn this meeting at 6:20 p.m. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.